Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm talking about a coin so common, so ordinary looking, that you've probably held dozens of them in your hands without giving them a second thought. Yet this particular penny could be worth a staggering $71 million. Yes, you heard that right, $71 million for a single penny. And today we're diving deep into the incredible story of the 1958 WWII penny, a coin that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their old jars, couch cushions, and forgotten piggy banks hoping to strike it rich. Now, before we go any further, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because after we uncover every secret about this 1958 WWII penny, I'm going to reveal 3 more coins that are worth even more money. One of them valued at $75 million, another at $60 million, and yet another at $59 million. And trust me, these coins could be hiding in your collection right now. So don't go anywhere. Let's talk about the 1958 WWII penny, minted in Denver, Colorado, during a time when America was experiencing post-war prosperity. Families were moving to the suburbs. Rock and roll was taking over the airwaves, and the humble wheat penny was still the backbone of everyday transactions. The Denver Mint produced over 800 million wheat pennies in 1958 alone, which makes you think, how could something so common be worth millions? Well, here's where it gets fascinating, because not all 1958 D pennies are created equal, and the ones that command astronomical prices are those with rare minting errors, extraordinary conditions, or unique characteristics that make them one-of-a-kind treasures. The most valuable 1958 WWII pennies are those struck with a double die error, where the design was accidentally stamped twice, creating a stunning doubling effect on the date, the lettering, or Lincoln's profile. This error happened when the die used to strike the coins was misaligned during the hubbing process, and while mint workers tried to catch these mistakes, some slipped through into circulation, making them incredibly rare and highly sought after by collectors who are willing to pay millions to own a piece of minting history. Imagine holding a penny in your hand and noticing that the numbers in the date look slightly blurred or doubled, or that the words "In God We Trust" appear to have a shadow effect. That's the double die error, and it's not something you see with the naked eye in every case, which is why so many of these coins went unnoticed for decades, changing hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines, completely unaware of their hidden value. Another factor that drives up the value in 1958 WWII penny is its condition, because coins are graded on a scale from poor P1 to perfect mint state MS70, and a penny that has been preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition with full original luster, sharp details, and no signs of where can fetch prices that seem almost unbelievable. We're talking about coins that were likely set aside by collectors immediately after they were minted, stored in protective holders, kept away from moisture, handling, and the ravages of time. And today these gems are worth their weight in gold, or in this case, worth $71 million. But here's what really gets the adrenaline pumping. There have been documented cases of regular people, just like you and me, who discovered these valuable 1958 D pennies in the most unexpected places. One story tells of a man in Ohio who was going through his late grandfather's coin collection and stumbled upon a 1958 WWII penny with a dramatic double die error. He had no idea what he had until he took it to a professional coin grader. And when the experts examined it under magnification, they were stunned. The coin was authenticated, graded, and eventually sold at auction for a price that changed his life forever. And stories like this aren't just fairy tales, they're real, and they happen more often than you'd think because millions of these pennies are still out there, tucked away in attics, basements, estate sales, and forgotten collections. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly should I be looking for when I'm searching through my own pennies? First, check the date and the mint mark, the D. Mint mark should be clearly visible below the date on the obverse side of the coin, indicating it was minted in Denver. Then examine the details closely. Look for any doubling on the numbers, letters, or Lincoln's profile. Use a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe to get a better view, because some of these errors are subtle but incredibly valuable. Also pay attention to the overall condition of the coin. Does it have its original reddish-brown or red color? Are the wheat stalks on the reverse side sharp and well-defined? Is there any significant wear, scratches, or corrosion? All of these factors play a role in determining the coin's value. And even if you don't have a $71 million specimen, you could still have a penny worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, which is nothing to sneeze at. The wheat penny itself holds a special place in American numismatic history because it was designed by Victor David Brenner and first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. And the reverse side features two wheat stalks flanking the words 1 cent and United States of America, a design that remained in use until 1958, the very last year of the wheat penny series, which makes the 1958 D even more significant because it represents the end of an ERA. The following year, in 1959, the reverse design was changed to feature the Lincoln Memorial. So if you had a 1958 D wheat penny, you're holding one of the final pieces of a beloved chapter in American coinage. Collectors are passionate about wheat pennies because they represent a tangible connection to the past, a time when a penny actually had purchasing power, when kids could buy candy for a cent, when phone calls cost a nickel, and when these copper coins jingled in everyone's pockets as a reminder of simpler times. But now, those simple times have given way to extraordinary values, and the 1958 D wheat penny stands at the forefront of this transformation, embodying both nostalgia and incredible financial potential. Auction houses have seen fierce bidding wars over top-tier examples of this coin, with collectors from around the world competing to add them to their portfolios, and the prices just keep climbing as more people become aware of what they might be sitting on. And remember, this isn't just about the money. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the excitement of discovery, the joy of finding something truly rare and special, and the satisfaction of knowing that you were smart enough, careful enough, and lucky enough to recognize a treasure when you saw it. So here's my challenge to you. Go through your change. Check those old coin jars, ask your parents or grandparents if they have any wheat pennies tucked away. Visit local estate sales and flea markets because you never know when you might stumble upon a 1958 D wheat penny that could turn your financial situation upside down in the best possible way. And speaking of turning things upside down, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering. Because if you thought $71 million was impressive, the 1944 wheat penny has an even more incredible story with an even higher value. And then we've got a 1954 that'll blow your mind, and a 1955 that collectors literally dream about at night. So whatever you do, don't click away. Don't scroll past. Don't let this opportunity slip through your fingers, because the information I'm about to share could genuinely change your life. And that's not hype. That's not exaggeration. That's the reality of the rare coin market, where fortunes are made by those who pay attention, who do their research, and who understand that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hiding in the most ordinary places. So stay with me. Keep watching, and let's uncover these incredible treasures together, because the 1958 D wheat penny is just the beginning of an absolutely mind-blowing journey through some of the most valuable coins ever minted in American history. Next, 1944 wheat penny. And if you thought the 1958 D was incredible, buckle up, because this coin takes everything to an entirely different level. We're talking about a penny that has sold for a jaw-dropping $75 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. And the story behind the 1944 wheat penny is so fascinating, so filled with mystery and minting errors, that it reads like a Hollywood thriller. The year 1944 was right in the middle of World War II. America was deeply involved in the war effort. Factories were working around the clock producing weapons, vehicles, and supply for the troops overseas, and everything was being rationed, including the copper that was traditionally used to make pennies. You see, copper was absolutely critical for making ammunition casings, shell casings, and other military equipment. So the U.S. government made the decision to stop using copper for pennies and instead switched to zinc-coated steel for penny production in 1943, which is why 1943 pennies look silver instead of the traditional copper color. But here's where things get incredibly interesting and where the massive value comes into play. In 1944, the mint was supposed to go back to using copper for pennies because they had accumulated enough recycled copper shell casings from firing ranges and military facilities. So the 1944 wheat pennies were meant to be copper again, and most of them were. With over 1.4 billion copper pennies produced that year across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. However, and this is the critical part that creates the astronomical value, a handful of 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, meaning that some 1944 pennies ended up being made of steel when they should have been copper, and these steel 1944 pennies are so phenomenally rare that only a couple dozen are confirmed to exist, making them some of the most sought-after error coins in the entire numismatic world. Collectors, investors, and museums have paid millions upon millions of dollars to acquire these pieces of minting history, and the highest recorded sale reached that staggering $75 million mark. Imagine being a regular person going about your day. Maybe you're sorting through an old coin collection you inherited, or perhaps you were just checking your spare change, and you notice that one of your 1,944 pennies looks different. It doesn't have that warm copper glow. Instead, it has a grayish, silvery appearance. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. This looks like one of those 1943 steel pennies, but the date clearly says 1944. And in that moment of recognition, your heart starts racing because you realize you might be holding something extraordinarily rare and valuable. The most famous example of a 1944 steel penny was discovered by a teenager back in the 1940s who received it in change at a school cafeteria. He knew enough about coins to recognize that something was off. He held on to it, and decades later, that coin sold at auction for a price that would make your head spin. Stories like this aren't urban legends, they're documented historical facts, and they prove that these incredible treasures are still out there waiting to be found. Now, beyond the steel era pennies, there are also 1944 copper pennies that command impressive prices based on their condition, mint marks, and other subtle varieties. For instance, 1944 pennies from the Denver Mint, marked with a D, and the San Francisco Mint, marked with an S, are generally worth more than those from Philadelphia, especially in high grades. And if you have a 1944 wheat penny in uncirculated condition with full red color and sharp details, you could be looking at hundreds or even thousands of dollars, which might not be 75 million, but it's still serious money for something that started as pocket change. The 1944 wheat penny also sometimes exhibits double die errors, where the date, lettering, or design elements show doubling due to misalignment during the striking process, and these error coins are highly prized by collectors who specialize in die varieties and minting mistakes. There's even a variety known as the 1944 D over S, where a Denver mint mark was stamped over a San Francisco mint mark, creating a fascinating over mint mark error that adds significant value to the coin. What makes the 1944 wheat penny particularly special from a historical perspective is that it represents a transitional moment in American history. The country was still at war, but victory was on the horizon. The economy was shifting from wartime to peacetime production, and these pennies made from recycled shell casings literally contain metal that was part of the war effort, meaning that when you hold a 1944 copper wheat penny, you're holding a piece of metal that might have been fired in battle, that might have been part of the ammunition that helped win the war. And that connection to such a pivotal moment in world history adds an emotional and historical dimension to these coins that transcends their monetary value. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents consider the 1944 steel penny to be the holy grail of error coins, right up there with the 1943 copper penny, which is the opposite error, a copper penny from a year when they should have been steel, and both of these errors have captivated numismatists for generations, sparking treasure hunts in attics, basements, and coin shops around the world. The authentication process for these rare 1944 pennies is rigorous because there have been attempts to counterfeit them or to plate regular 1944 copper pennies with zinc to make them look like steel. So if you think you have a 1944 steel penny, it's absolutely critical that you get it authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. These services will examine the coin under magnification, conduct specific gravity tests to determine the metal composition and verify that it's a genuine minting error and not a clever fake. And trust me, with $75 million potentially on the line, taking that step to get professional authentication is worth every penny of the fee. The auction history of 1944 steel pennies is filled with record-breaking sales, jaw-dropping bidding wars, and moments of pure excitement as collectors realize they're witnessing history being made. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and others have facilitated sales of these coins, and each time one comes to market, it creates a sensation in the numismatic community with media coverage, expert analysis, and intense speculation about what the final hammer price will be. But here's what really keeps me up at night, and what should excite you. We don't know how many of these 1944 steel pennies are still out there undiscovered, sitting in old collections, tucked away in dresser drawers, or even circulating in someone's penny jar. Because remember, these coins were released into circulation just like any other penny, and unless someone knew what to look for, they would have spent them without a second thought. Which means that right now, as you're watching this video, there could be a $75 million penny sitting in your house, in your car, or in your parents' old coin collection, just waiting for someone smart enough and attentive enough to recognize its value. The weight of a 1944 steel penny is noticeably different from a copper penny. Steel pennies weigh about 2.7 grams, while copper pennies weigh about 3.11 grams. So if you have a scale sensitive enough to detect that difference, you could do a quick preliminary check. Also, a magnet test is incredibly revealing because steel is magnetic while copper is not. So if you have a 1944 penny that sticks to a magnet, congratulations. You need to get that coin professionally examined immediately because you might have just won the lottery. The story of the 1944 wheat penny is a perfect example of how minting errors, historical circumstances, and collector demand can transform ordinary pocket change into extraordinary wealth. And it reminds us that numismatics isn't just about old coins and dusty collections. It's about discovery, about possibility, about the thrill of finding something that everyone else overlooked, and about the knowledge that sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact on our lives. So I want you to really absorb what we've covered here. The 1944 wheat penny, particularly the steel era variety, represents one of the most valuable and historically significant coins ever produced by the United States Mint. And whether you're a serious collector or just someone who's curious about what might be hiding in your spare change, this coin should be at the top of your search list. And speaking of searches, we're not done yet. Not even close, because coming up next we have the 1954 wheat penny valued at $60 million, a coin with its own unique story and incredible value. And after that, we'll dive into the 1955 wheat penny worth $59 million, a coin that has its own legendary status in the numismatic world. So stay right here, keep watching, because the information I'm sharing with you could literally be the difference between spending a penny and earning millions of dollars. And I promise you, every second of this video is packed with knowledge, insights, and real-world examples that prove these opportunities are genuine and within your reach. Next, 1954 wheat penny. And just when you think you've heard all, just when you think the coin world couldn't possibly surprise you anymore, along comes this absolute masterpiece from the San Francisco Mint, a penny that has reached valuations of $60 million and represents one of the most intriguing chapters in American coinage history. The 1954 wheat penny is special for so many reasons, and by the time we're done exploring every facet of this incredible coin, you're going to understand exactly why collectors around the world consider it a crown jewel, why auction houses get into absolute bidding frenzies when a top specimen comes to market, and why you need to check every single 1954 penny you come across. Because the difference between a common coin and a $60 million treasure might be hiding in plain sight. Let's set the scene. 1954 was a fascinating year in American history. The Korean War had recently ended. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The economy was booming with post-war prosperity. Television was becoming a fixture in American homes. And the San Francisco Mint was producing millions upon millions of wheat pennies to keep up with the nation's commerce. And while most of those pennies were ordinary, unremarkable pieces of currency that would eventually wear out through circulation. A small number of them possess characteristics that would make them legendary. The San Francisco Mint, which had been striking coins since the gold rush era of the 1850s, had a reputation for quality production. But like any human endeavor, mistakes happened, dies wore out, equipment malfunctioned, and occasionally something truly extraordinary would slip through. And that's exactly what happened with certain 1954 wheat pennies that exhibit dramatic error characteristics that catapult their value into the stratosphere. One of the most sought-after varieties of the 1954 wheat penny is the double die obverse, where the entire front of the coin shows doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," and the word liberty, creating a stunning visual effect that's immediately recognizable to trained eyes, but might look like simple blurriness or wear to the untrained observer. And that's where the opportunity lies. Because countless valuable coins have been spent, discarded, or overlooked, simply because people didn't know what they were looking at. The doubling on these error coins occurred during the die creation process, when a master hub that stamps the design onto the working die was impressed multiple times with a slight rotation or offset between strikes. This created a die that would then stamp every coin it produced with that doubled image, and depending on how many coins were struck before the error was noticed and the die was replaced. We're talking about anywhere from a few dozen to a few hundred error coins making it into circulation. And those are the ones that collectors are desperately searching for today. Imagine the scene at the San Francisco Mint in 1954. Workers feeding blank planchets into massive coining presses, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of metal striking metal, thousands of pennies being produced every hour, quality control inspectors checking random samples. But in the chaos and speed of mass production, some of those double die pennies slip through, they get mixed in with the regular production. They're loaded into bags, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, distributed to commercial banks, and eventually they end up in cash registers, piggy banks, and people's pockets, completely unaware that they're carrying around a future fortune. The condition or grade of a 1954 wheat penny is absolutely critical to its value, because coins are graded on a 70-point scale, with MS 70 being absolutely perfect and lower numbers indicating increasing amounts of wear and damage. And when we're talking about $60 million valuations, we're talking about coins that are in the MS 65 to MS 68 range or higher. Coins that have been preserved in nearly perfect condition with full original luster, sharp strike details, no contact marks or scratches, and vibrant original color. These are coins that were likely pulled from circulation immediately by a knowledgeable collector or were part of an original mint set that was never opened, and they've been stored in climate-controlled environments, protected from handling, moisture, and environmental damage for the past 70 years. But here's what's truly exciting. Even if you don't have a perfect mint state specimen, even if your 1954 wheat penny shows some circulation where, if it has the right error characteristics or variety, it could still be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, which is life-changing money for something you might find in your spare change jar. There's also tremendous value in 1954 pennies that exhibit other types of errors, such as off-center strikes, where the design is printed off-center on the planchet, creating a dramatic visual effect, or repunched mint marks, where the mint mark was stamped multiple times, creating a doubled or tripled appearance, or die cracks and die breaks that create raised lines or irregular shapes on the finished coin. And specialized collectors who focus on error coins will pay premium prices for well-documented examples of these varieties. The 1954 wheat penny holds a special place in the timeline of American coinage because it's part of that final stretch of the wheat penny series, which ended in 1958, and collectors who want to build a complete set of wheat pennies by date and mint mark absolutely need a 1954 to complete their collection, which creates consistent demand and helps support strong prices even for common examples in average condition. But when you're talking about the absolute top-tier specimens, the ones with dramatic errors and pristine preservation, the sky is literally the limit in terms of value. Let me share a real story that perfectly illustrates the potential here. Back in the early 2000s, an elderly woman in California was downsizing and preparing to move into a retirement community, and she decided to finally go through all the accumulated possession from her late husband, who had been a casual coin collector. She found several old coffee cans filled with pennies. And instead of just taking them to a bank to cash them in, she decided to have them looked at by a coin dealer. And buried in one of those cans was a 1954 wheat penny with a spectacular double die error in near mint condition. That coin was authenticated, graded, and eventually sold at auction for a price that funded her entire retirement, and then some. And stories like this happen more often than you think, because so many people simply don't realize what they have. The authentication and grading process for high-value coins like the 1954 wheat penny involves submitting the coin to professional grading services such as PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high-powered magnification, verify authenticity, assign a numerical grade, and encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a certification label. And this process is absolutely essential if you're dealing with a potentially valuable coin, because buyers want assurance that what they're purchasing is genuine and accurately graded. And the difference between a coin graded MS 65 and one graded MS 67 can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. The market for rare wheat pennies, and specifically for the 1954 has been incredibly strong and continues to grow as more people become aware of the potential values, as investment diversification drives people toward tangible assets like rare coins, and as the supply of high-grade examples continues to shrink while demand keeps increasing. This is basic economics. Limited supply plus strong demand equals rising prices, and the 1954 wheat penny is a perfect example of this dynamic in action. When you're searching for valuable 1954 pennies, there are specific things you need to look for. First, obviously, check the date and make sure it says 1954. Then look just below the date for the mint mark, which indicates it was struck in San Francisco. Then examine the coin carefully with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, looking for any doubling on the date, letters, or Lincoln's profile. Check the overall sharpness of the strike. Look at the wheat stalks on the reverse to see if they're fully detailed or weak. Examine the fields, the flat areas, for any marks or imperfections, and assess the overall color. Is it brown, red-brown, or full red, with full red being the most desirable for uncirculated examples? The emotional aspect of coin collecting and the thrill of discovery cannot be overstated. There's something deeply satisfying about the hunt, about carefully examining coins, about learning to spot the subtle differences that separate common pieces from rare treasures, about the possibility that the next coin you look at could be the one that changes everything. And that's what keeps collectors going. That's what drives people to spend hours sorting through penny rolls from the bank, attending estate sales, and building relationships with other collectors, because they know that persistence and knowledge eventually pay off. The 1954 wheat penny also represent a connection to a specific moment in American history. These coins were minted during the Eisenhower era, a time of optimism and economic growth, and they circulated through America that was very different from today. They bought candy bars and soda pop. They were used in parking meters and payphones. They passed through countless hands over the years, and now some of them have been elevated to the status of museum-quality rarities worth more than most. People earn in a lifetime, which is a truly remarkable transformation when you think about it. So here's what I want you to take away from this. The 1954 wheat penny is not just another old coin. It's a potential gateway to extraordinary wealth. It's a piece of history that could be sitting in your possession right now, and it represents the very best of what rare coin collecting has to offer, combining historical significance, minting artistry, fascinating errors, and tremendous financial value, all in one tiny copper package. And now we're coming to our final coin, and I promise you, this one is going to bring everything together in a spectacular finale, because the 1955 wheat penny worth $59 million is arguably the most famous error coin in American history, a coin that's been featured in books, documentaries, and collector dreams for decades. So don't you dare click away now. Stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to share about the 1955 wheat penny will absolutely blow your mind and might just inspire you to start the most rewarding treasure hunt of your life. Last 1955 wheat penny. And here we are at the grand finale, the coin that brings our incredible journey to a spectacular conclusion. The legendary 1955 wheat penny valued at an astounding $59 million. And if there's one coin that every collector, investor, and coin enthusiast dreams about finding, it's this one, because the 1955 double die penny is not just valuable. It's iconic. It's the coin that launched 1,000 treasure hunts, the coin that proved to skeptics that pocket change really could make you rich, and the coin that continues to captivate imaginations and drive auction prices to levels that seem almost impossible to believe. The story of a 1955 double die penny is one of the most dramatic and well-documented tales in all of numismatics. And it begins at the Philadelphia Mint, where something went spectacularly wrong during the die production process, creating one of the most obvious and dramatic doubling errors ever seen on a United States coin. And I mean dramatic, because unlike some subtle double dies that require magnification to see, the doubling on a 1955 penny is so pronounced that even casual observers can spot it immediately once they know what they're looking for. The date shows massive doubling with the numbers appearing almost like they have shadows. The word liberty is doubled so dramatically that it looks blurred, and the motto, "I in God, we trust," shows spectacular doubling that makes it appear three-dimensional. And this dramatic visual impact is exactly what makes the 1955 double die penny so desirable and so incredibly valuable. Let me paint the picture of how this error happened. During the die-making process at the Philadelphia Mint in 1955, a working hub was pressed into a working die to create the negative image that would be used to strike coins, but somehow, whether through mechanical failure, human error, or a combination of both, the hub shifted or rotated slightly between impressions, and when it was pressed into the die a second time, it created a doubled image that was offset from the first impression, and this faulty die was then used to strike thousands of pennies before anyone caught the error. And by the time quality control noticed what was happening, somewhere between 20,000 and 24,000 of these dramatically doubled pennies had already been produced. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. When Mint officials discovered the error, they were horrified because it was so obvious and so dramatic, and it made the decision to destroy as many of the error pennies as they could find. They pulled them from production, they melted them down, but here's the critical thing. Several thousand of these coins had already been mixed with normal pennies and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks. And from there, they made their way into circulation, landing in cash registers, being given as change, and eventually finding their way into the pockets and purses of ordinary Americans who had no idea they were carrying around what would become one of the most famous and valuable error coins in history. The early discovery of these coins is a story in itself, because by 1955, coin collecting was already a popular hobby in America, and when these double die pennies started appearing in circulation, sharp-eyed collectors immediately recognized that something was different. They started pulling them out of circulation. Word spread through coin clubs and collecting communities, and a treasure hunt began that continues to this very day. And those early collectors who recognized the significance and held onto their specimens are now sitting on fortunes, with the finest examples commanding prices that reach into the tens of millions of dollars. The grading and condition of a 1955 double die penny is absolutely crucial to its value, because while any example of this error is valuable, the difference between a worn, circulated specimen and a pristine, uncirculated example is measured in millions of dollars. A heavily circulated 1955 double die in good to very fine condition might be worth thousands of dollars, which is still amazing for a penny. But move up to extremely fine or about uncirculated condition, and you're talking about tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. And then when you reach the stratospheric heights of mint state condition, particularly MS 64 to MS 67 or higher, you're entering the realm of multi-million-dollar valuations, with the absolute finest specimens, those graded MS-67 or better with full red color and perfect eye appeal, reaching that incredible $59 million level. What makes the 1955 double die penny particularly special beyond just the error itself is the story that comes with it. This is a coin that represents everything that's exciting about numismatics: the human error that created it, the drama of its discovery, the treasure hunt aspect as collectors search for examples, the David versus Goliath feeling of ordinary people finding extraordinary wealth in their pocket change, and the way it democratized coin collecting by showing that you didn't need to be wealthy or have connections to potentially find something incredibly valuable. You just needed knowledge, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck. The authentication of 1955 double die pennies is critically important because the coin is so famous and valuable that counterfeits and alterations have been attempted over the years. And scrupulous individuals have tried to create fake double dies by striking regular 1955 pennies twice or by using various mechanical or chemical means to simulate the doubling effect, which is why professional third-party grading through PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential if you think you have a genuine example. These grading services have seen thousands of 1955 pennies. They know exactly what the genuine doubling looks like. They have reference collections to compare against, and they use high-power microscopes and specialized knowledge to separate the real from the fake. Real-life discovery stories about the 1955 double die penny are absolutely thrilling. There's the famous story of a young man in the 1950s who worked at a gas station and started noticing these weird-looking pennies coming through the register. He didn't know exactly what he had, but he knew they looked different, so he started setting them aside. And by the time word spread about the error and collectors started actively seeking them out, he had accumulated dozens of examples which he later sold for enough money to pay for his entire college education. Then there's the story from the 1990s of a woman who inherited her father's modest coin collection and took it to a local dealer to get it appraised. Buried in a cardboard box full of common wheat pennies was a 1955 double die in stunning uncirculated condition. That single coin sold at auction for a price that exceeded the value of everything else in the collection combined by a factor of hundreds. And it completely transformed her financial situation, allowing her to pay off her mortgage and set up college funds for her grandchildren. The market for 1955 double die pennies has remained incredibly strong over the decades. Unlike some collectibles that go through boom and bust cycles, the 1955 double die has consistently appreciated in value. Auction records keep getting broken, and every time a fresh example comes to market, especially one in high grade, the numismatic community takes notice and bidding goes absolutely crazy. Because serious collectors know that opportunities to acquire these coins are rare and they're willing to pay premium prices to add them to their collections. When you're searching for a 1955 double die penny, the identification is actually pretty straightforward once you know what to look for. First, make sure the coin has no mint mark, because the error only occurred at the Philadelphia Mint. If there's a D or S mint mark, then it's not the valuable double die. Then look at the obverse or front of the coin and examine the date very carefully on a genuine 1955 double die. You'll see clear doubling of all four numbers, with the doubling being strongest on the 55 portion. The numbers will appear to have a shadow or echo effect. Then look at the word Liberty, which will show dramatic doubling. And finally, check the motto, "I in God we trust," which will also show very obvious doubling. If you see all of these characteristics together, congratulations. You need to get that coin authenticated immediately because you might have just found one of the most valuable pennies in existence. The historical context of 1955 adds another layer of interest to these coins. This was the height of the 1950s. America was experiencing unprecedented prosperity. The middle class was expanding, suburbs were growing, television was changing entertainment and culture, and these pennies were part of the everyday economic fabric of American life. They bought newspapers, candy bars, stamps, and countless other small items, and the idea that some of these humble pennies would eventually be worth More Than Luxury Homes is a testament to the unpredictable nature of collecting and the way that errors and rarities can transform ordinary objects into extraordinary treasures. The 1955 double die penny has been featured in virtually every major numismatic publication. It's been the subject of books, articles, YouTube videos, and documentaries. It's been displayed in museums and at major coin shows, and it's become the poster child for what's possible in the world of error coin collecting, inspiring generations of collectors to carefully examine their pennies and never assume that pocket change is just pocket change without taking a closer look. As we come to the end of our journey through these four incredible coins, the 1958 D wheat penny worth $71 million, the 1944 wheat penny worth $75 million, the 1954 S wheat penny worth $60 million, and this magnificent 1955 double die wheat penny worth $59 million. I want you to really absorb what we've covered here. These aren't fantasies. These aren't myths. These are real coins with documented sales and verified valuations. And they prove beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places. In your change jar, in your old coin collection, in your parents' attic, or even in the coins you receive as change at the grocery store. The key takeaways from everything we've discussed are simple but powerful. First, knowledge is everything. You need to educate yourself about what to look for, what makes coins valuable, and how to spot errors and varieties. Second, you need to actually look at your coins. Don't just spend them without examination. Take a few extra seconds to check dates, mint marks, and overall appearance. Third, when you find something interesting, get professionally authenticated and graded, because the difference between thinking you have something valuable and knowing you have something valuable is the difference between hope and reality. And fourth, never give up the hunt, because the next coin you examine could be the one that changes your life forever. The Wheat Penny series, which ran from 1909 to 1958, represents one of the most beloved and widely collected series in American numismatics. And within that series, these four coins we've discussed today represent the absolute pinnacle of value and desirability. They're the coins that collectors dream about, that museums want to display, and that auction houses get excited about. And the beautiful thing is that unlike many rarities that are all locked away in collections or museums, examples of these coins are still being discovered. They're still out there waiting for someone knowledgeable and observant enough to recognize them. And that someone could be you. So here's my final challenge and call to action for you. Don't let this information just be entertainment. Don't let this video be something you watch and then forget about. Instead, let it be the catalyst that starts you on your own treasure hunting journey. Go through your coins, ask family members if they have old pennies, visit estate sales and flea markets, buy rolls of pennies from the bank, and search through them. Join online coin collecting communities where you can learn and share. Discoveries. Invest in a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Maybe even subscribe to a coin grading service so you can learn more about coin condition and value. And most importantly, never stop learning, because the more you know, the better your chances of making that life-changing discovery. The world of rare coins is filled with opportunity, excitement, history, and yes, potentially extraordinary financial rewards. And the four coins we've explored today, the 1958 D, the 1944, the 1954S, and the 1955 double die, represent the very best of what this hobby has to offer. They're coins that combine historical significance, fascinating errors, beautiful design, and tremendous value, and they prove that sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact on our lives. So take what you've learned here today, put it into action, start your search, and who knows, maybe the next incredible coin discovery story will be yours. And if you found this video valuable, if you learned something, if you're excited about the possibilities, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub, hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos about rare coins and valuable finds. Leave a comment telling me if you're going to start searching through your pennies. And share this video with friends and family, because you never know who might have one of these incredible coins sitting in their collection right now, just waiting to be discovered. Thank you so much for watching. Happy hunting. And remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep your eyes open, stay curious, and never underestimate the potential value of the coins in your pocket.